So, hello and welcome back yet again. My silly kitty cat decided that he needed loving right now. Of course, he also now is like, "Who are you talking to and why are you talking to someone that's not me?" and is probably going to leave. But at least he doesn't have the zoomies right now. Right now he was feeling very, very cuddly. Bye, Parky. So, yeah, Merry Christmas. I am trying to forestall a food coma and am definitely far behind because this video is supposed to go up in a couple of hours, so I probably should get it done, but it's Christmas and I am feeling very much like behind the times. I don't know when you'll be watching this. I mean, if you watch it when it comes out, you'll be watching it on Christmas, but if not, that's whenever, whatever. But if it's anywhere near the Christmas season, Merry Christmas. I hope that you had a wonderful day. I mean, it was a good day. I ate really good food and that's my favorite part of Christmas. I made a prime rib roast. It's like the one time a year I am willing to splurge on something that expensive, and I've finally learned how to cook it like properly. And so you could almost cut it with a butter knife. It was so, so good. I made it with twice baked potatoes and a side of Brussels sprouts that were roasted in the oven with a little bit of bacon on the side because bacon makes everything better, and a little bit of au jus to go with the beef. And it was wonderful. And I ate far too much of it. And I had all these grand plans about going out for a walk, and I don't think it would be a walk at this point. I think I would have to go out for a roll because I ate too much. I even put some of it away, but I'm really full. Not uncomfortably full, just to the point where I feel like I probably would have to unbutton my pants if I weren't wearing sweatpants. So it was worth it though. And I hope that you had an equally wonderful day. Happy Hanukkah if you celebrate. Today is the first day of Hanukkah. It doesn't happen very often that both of these holidays land on the same day, but this is one of those times. So, and if you celebrate, I do believe that tomorrow is the either first day, I need to look into it a little bit more, or perhaps the main day of Kwanzaa. So if you celebrate Kwanzaa, happy Kwanzaa. And yeah, other than that, we're going to be jumping back in and reading another chapter of Beverly of Graustark by George Barr McCutcheon. And sounds like Beverly, I mean, she seemed to be in some sort of peril at the end of the last chapter. She at least thought she was. There is a giant thunderstorm. She has discovered that the rebel leader, who I was skimming through this chapter that we're going to read today, I had forgotten that his name is Baldos, but she's discovered that he's not horribly disfigured. He must be wearing the eye patch as a fashion accessory because she saw him without it and seemed quite taken with him, and then quite terrified by the whole thunder and lightning thing. And then everything collapsed, and she got dragged away, and we were left on sort of a cliffhanger. So, now that I have waffled for almost 5 minutes, let's jump back in to Chapter 6 of Beverly of Graustark, The Home of the Lion. "May all storms be as pleasant as this one," Beverly heard someone say with a merry laugh. In an instant she was placed back soundly on her feet. A blinding flash of lightning revealed Baldos, the goat hunter, at her side, while a dozen shadowy figures were scrambling to their feet in all the corners of the Hawk and Raven. Someone was clutching her around the knees. She didn't have to look down to know that that was Aunt Fanny. "Goodness!" gasped the princess. Then it was pitch dark again. The man at her side called out a command in his own language, and then he turned his face to hers. Do not be alarmed. We are quite safe now. The royal bedchamber seems to have come to grief, however, I'm sorry to say. What a fool I was not to have foreseen all of this. The storm has been brewing since midnight, he told her. Isn't it awful? Cried Beverly, somewhere between a moan and a shriek. They're but trifles after you get used to them, he told her. I have come to be quite at home in this tempest. There are other things much more annoying, I assure you, your highness. We will have lights on in a moment. Even as he spoke, 2 or 3 lanterns began to feebly flicker. Be quiet, Aunt Fanny. You haven't been killed at all, said Beverly quite firmly. This place is going to blow down, your highness, said the trusty maidservant. Beverly laughed bravely but nervously with the tall goat hunter. He at once set about making his guest comfortable and secure from the effects of the storm, which was now at its height. Her couch of cushions was dragged far back into the cavern, and the rescued blankets, though now quite drenched, again became a screen. Do you imagine that I'm going in there while this storm is a-raging? Beverly demanded. Aren't you afraid of the lightning? Most young women are. That is the trouble. I am afraid of it. I would much rather stay out here where there's company. You don't mind, do you? Paradise cannot be spurned by one who now feels it in the warmth for the very first time, he said. Your fear is my delight. Pray, sit upon the throne. It was once a humble carriage pail of leather, but now it is exalted by you. Besides, it's much more comfortable than some of the gilded thrones that we've heard about. You seem given to irony, said Beverly, looking at the peculiar smile on his lips. I crave pardon, your highness, he humbly said. The heart of the goat hunter is more gentle than his wit. I will not again forget that you are a princess and I am but a beggar. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings, cried Beverly, for she felt she was a very poor example of what a princess was supposed to be. There is no wound, your highness, he quickly said. And then with a mocking grace that almost angered her, he dropped to one knee and motioned for her to be seated. She sat down suddenly, clapping her hands on her ears and shutting her eyes. The crash of thunder that came at that instant was the most fearful of all, and it was a full minute before she dared to lift her eyelids again. He was standing in front of her, and there was genuine compassion on his face. It's terrible, he said. Never before have I seen such a storm. Have courage, your highness. It can last but a little longer. Goodness, said the real American girl, for want of anything more expressive. Your servant has crept into your couch, I fear. Shall I sit here at your feet? Perhaps you may feel a small bit of security if I... Indeed, I do want you to sit there, she cried. So he sat down upon the floor of the cave, a graceful and respectful guardian. Minutes went by without either of them saying a word. The noise of the storm made it almost impossible to speak and be heard. Scattered around the cavern were his outstretched followers, doubtless asleep once more. With the first lull in the war of the elements, Beverly gave utterance to the thought that had long been struggling for release. Why do you wear that horrid black patch over your eye? She said, a trifle timidly. He muttered a sharp exclamation, and he clapped his hand to his eye. For the first time since the beginning of their strange acquaintanceship, Beverly observed downright confusion on this debonair knight of the wild's face. It has slipped off, he stammered with a guilty smile. His merry insolence was gone, and so was his composure. Beverly laughed with keen enjoyment over the discomfiture of the shamefaced vagabond. "You can't fool me," she exclaimed, shaking her finger at him in the most unconventional way. "It was intended as a disguise. There's absolutely nothing wrong with your eye." He was speechless for a moment, recovering himself. Wisdom is conceived in silence, and he well knew this. Vagabond or gentleman, thought Beverly, he was a clever actor. "The eye is weak, Your Highness, and I cover it during the day to protect it from the sunlight," he finally coolly said. "That's all very well and good, but it looks to be quite as good as the other eye. And what is more, sir, you are not putting the patch over the same eye that wore it when I first saw you. It was the left eye at sunset. Does the trouble with your eyesight transfer after dark?" He broke into an honest laugh, and he hastily moved the black patch across his nose to his left eye. "I was turned around in the darkness, that's all," he told her. "It belongs over the left eye, and I am deeply grateful that you discovered the error." "I don't see any special reason why you should wear it after dark, do you? There ain't no sunlight right now, I'm sure." "I'm dazzled by you nonetheless," he retorted. "Fiddlesticks," she told him. "This is a cave, not a drawing room." "In other words, I am a lout and not a courtier?" He smiled. "Well, a lout may look at a princess. We have no court etiquette in the hills, I'm sorry to say." "That was very unkind, even though you said it most becomingly," she said. "You've called this pale a throne, so let us also imagine that you are now a courtier." "You punish me most gently, Your Highness. I will not forget my manners again, believe me." He now seemed thoroughly subdued. "Well, then I shall expect you to remove that horrid black thing. It's positively villainous. You look better without it." "Is that an edict or a compliment?" he said. "It's neither," she told him. "You don't have to take it off unless you want to." "In either event, it's off. You were right. It serves as a partial disguise. I have many enemies, and this black patch is a very good friend." "How perfectly lovely!" cried Beverly. "Tell me all about it. I love stories about feuds and all that." "Your husband, madam, is an American. He should be able to keep you well entertained with blood and thunder stories." "My what are you? Oh, yeah," gasped Beverly. To be sure, I didn't hear you, I guess. That was a rather loud clap of thunder, wasn't it?" "Is that also a command?" What do you mean?" "There was no thunder, as you well know." "Oh, there wasn't?" "The storm is quite past. There is still a dash of rain in the air, and the wind may be drying hard, but aside from that, I think that the noise is quite gone now." "I believe you're right," she said. "How sudden it all ended." "There are several hours between now and dawn, Your Highness, and you should try to get a little more sleep. Your cushions are dry and—" "Well, very well. Since you're so eager to get rid of—" began Beverly, and then she stopped, for she thought it did not sound particularly regal. "I should have said, you're very thoughtful. You will call me if I sleep late." "We are planning an early start, with your permission. It is 40 miles to Ganlook, and we must be halfway there by night." "Do we have to spend another night like this?" said Beverly. Alas, I fear that you must endure us for another night. I am afraid, however, we will not find quarters as comfortable as the ones here at the Hawk and Raven. I didn't mean to be ungrateful and, snippish, she said, wondering if he knew the meaning of the word. No, he said politely, and she knew that he did not, whereupon she felt distinctly humbled. You know you speak excellent English, she told him. He bowed low. As he straightened his figure, to his amazement, he beheld an agonizing look of horror on Beverly's face. Her eyes were riveted on the mouth of the cavern, and then there came an angrier sound, unlike any that had gone on through this night of turmoil. Look! Quick! The cry of terror from the girl's palsied lips as she pointed to something behind them awoke the mountain man to instant action. Instinctively, he grabbed his long dagger from its sheath and turned quickly. Not 20 feet from them, a huge cat-like beast stood half crouched on the edge of the darkness, its long tail twitching angrily. The feeble light from the depth of the cave threw the long, water-soaked visitor into bold relief against the black wall beyond. Apparently, the creature was as much surprised as the two who were glaring at him, though he was just as frozen as they were. A snarl, a whine, a fierce growl indicated his fury at finding his shelter, his lair occupied. My God, it's a mountain lion! Ravone, Franz, to me! Cried the man hoarsely, and he sprang in front of Beverly, shouting loudly to those who were asleep. A score of men, only half awake, grabbed their weapons and struggled to their feet to answer his call. The lion's gaunt body shot through the air, and in 2 bounds was upon the goat hunter. Baldos stood square and firm to meet the rush of the maddened beast, his long dagger poised for the death blow. Run, he shouted to Beverly. But Beverly Calhoun had fighting blood in her veins. Utterly unconscious of her actions at the time, she quickly drew the little silver-handled revolver from the pocket of her gown. As man, beast, and knife came together, in her excitement she fired recklessly at the combatants without any thought of the immediate danger of killing her protector. There was a wild scream of pain from the wounded beast, more pistol shots, fierce yelling from the hunters, and the rush of feet. And then the terrified and almost frantic Beverly staggered and fell against the rocky wall. Her wide gray eyes were fastened upon the writhing lion, and the smoking pistol was still tightly clutched in her hand. It had all occurred in such an incredibly short space of time that she could not yet realize what had even happened. Her brain and her heart seemed paralyzed. Her limbs were stiff and immovable. Like the dizzy whirl of a kaleidoscope, the picture in front of her resolved itself finally back into shape. The beast was gasping its last upon the rocky floor, the hilt of the goat hunter's dagger protruding from its side. Baldos, held up by 2 of his men, stood above the savage victim, his legs covered in blood. The cave was full of smoke and the smell of powder. Out of the haze, she began to see the light of understanding. Baldos was the only one injured. He had stood between her and the rush of the lion, and he had saved her, but at the cost she did not know how great it would be. Oh, the blood! She cried. Are you badly hurt? Then she was at his side, the pistol falling from her nervous fingers. Don't come near me, I'm all right, he cried. Take care, ma'am, your dress. Oh, I'm just so glad to hear you speak. Never mind my dress, you're all ripped to pieces. You must be frightfully hurt. Oh, isn't it terrible, horrible? Aunt Fanny, get over here this minute. Forgetting the beast and throwing off the paralysis of her fear, Beverly pushed one of the men away and grasped the arm of the injured man. He winced perceptibly, and she felt something warm and sticky on her hands. She knew it was blood, but it was not in her to shrink away at a moment like this. "Your arm, too?" she said. He smiled, though his face was white with pain. "How brave you were! You might have been... I'll never forget it, never! Don't you just stand there, Aunt Fanny! Quick! Get the cushions for him! He's hurt!" "Oh, good Lord," was all the older woman could say, but she obeyed her mistress. "It was easier than it looked, Your Highness," said Baldos. "Luck was with me. The knife went into his heart. I'm just scratched. His leap was short, but he caught me above the knees with his claws. Alas, Your Highness, my trousers were bad enough before, but now they're just in shreds. What patchwork I will have to do, and you may well imagine that we are a bit short of thread and needles and thimbles and—" "Don't you be joking, for heaven's sake. Don't talk like that. Now here, lie down on these cushions and—" "Never," he told her. "Desecrate the couch of Graustark's ruler. I, the poor goat hunter. I'll use the lion for a pillow, and the rock can be an operating table. In 10 minutes, my men can have these scratches dressed and bound. In fact, there is a surgical student among them, poor fellow. I think I'm his first patient. Ravone, come and attend me." He then threw himself upon the ground and calmly placed his head on the body of the lion. "I insist that you take these cushions," said Beverly. "And I irrevocably decline." Beverly stared at him in positive anger. "Trust Ravone to dress these trifling wounds, Your Highness. He may not be as gentle, but he is as firm as any princess in all the world." "But your arm," she said. "Didn't you say it was your legs? Your arm's all covered in blood, too. Dear me, I think you're frightfully wounded." "A stray bullet from one of my men struck me there, I think. You know, there was but little time for them to aim, and—" "Wait! Let me think for a minute. Oh, good heavens!" Beverly exclaimed. Her eyes were suddenly filled with tears, and her voice broke. "I shot you! Don't deny it, don't! It's the right arm, and your men wouldn't have been able to hit it from where they were standing. Oh!" Baldos smiled as he bared his arm. "Your aim was good," he admitted. "Had not my knife already been in the lion's heart, your bullet would have gone there. It was just my misfortune that my arm was in the way. Besides, Your Highness, it's only cut through the skin, and a little more, perhaps. It will be well in a few days. I'm sure that you will find your bullet in the carcass of our lamented friend, the probable owner of this place." Just then, Ravone, a hungry-looking youth, took charge of his wounded leader, while Her Highness retreated to the corner of the cave. There she sat and trembled while the wounds were being dressed. Aunt Fanny bustled back and forth, first unceremoniously pushing her way through the circle of men to take observations, and then coming back to report to the impatient girl. The storm had passed, and the night was still except for the rush of the river. Raindrops fell now and then off of the trees, glistening like diamonds as they touched the light from the cave mouth. It was all very dreary, uncanny, and quite oppressive to poor Beverly. Now and then she caught herself sobbing, more out of shame and humiliation than in sadness, for had she not shot the man who had stepped between her and certain doom? What must he think of her? "He says that you should go to bed, Miss Beverly. I mean, Your Highness," said Aunt Fanny. "Oh, he does he?" sniffed Beverly. "I'll go to bed when I please. You tell him so. No, don't do that, Aunt Fanny. Tell him I'll go to bed when I'm sure he's quite comfortable and not before." But, ma'am, he's just a goat puncher, or he is a man if there ever was one. Don't let me hear you calling him a goat puncher again. How are his legs?" Aunt Fanny was quite stunned by this amazing question from her oh so decorous mistress. "Why aren't you answering me, Aunt Fanny? Are they going to have to be cutting them off? Didn't you see them?" "Oh, for Lord's sake. Of course I did, but you're kind of surprising me. They're pretty badly skinned up, miss. His hide has been peeled up considerably, but it didn't hit anything dangerous. Just skin, that's all." "And his arm? Where I shot him?" "Nothing but a trifle, your highness. Cobwebs would stop the bleeding, and I told them that, but they fellows couldn't understand me. Mr. What's-his-man, he did say something to the doctor, and then they went after the cobwebs. It's not bleeding anymore, miss. He's mostly doing very fine. Of course, he can't walk for a few days with those legs on him, but—" "Well, in heaven's name, how are we supposed to get to Edelweiss then?" "Well, he can ride, can't he?" "What would there be to hinder him?" said Aunt Fanny. "Oh, quite right. He can ride inside the coach. Go and see if I can do anything for him." A few minutes later, Aunt Fanny returned. "He says that you will be doing him a great favor if you would just go to bed. He sends his respects, and he hopes that your slumber won't be disturbed again." "Oh, he is just a perfect brute," said Beverly. But she went over, and she crawled under the blankets and amongst the cushions that the wounded man had scorned. And that is the end of chapter 6. Oh, well, if these two are supposed to be having a romance, I'm not sure that shooting him is the best way to do it. Also, me being me, I'm feeling a great deal of sympathy for the mountain lion, who was probably just trying to go back to his cave, and suddenly there's humans in it, and then he gets shot. You can kind of tell that whoever wrote this probably didn't know much about mountain lions, because in all likelihood, I mean, maybe European mountain lions are different, but in all likelihood, the mountain lion would not have even approached, because they don't really like people. They do kill people occasionally, but usually only if they are sick, wounded, or, maybe have cubs to feed. But it does make for a thrilling story, and it definitely ups the tension, because now our fair princess is going to have to be riding in the carriage with old Baldos. So yeah, she already thinks he's good looking. Poor Aunt Fanny. She's going to have to play chaperone. Anyway, thank you for listening. I really do appreciate it. Like, I say that every time, but it is actually a sincere fact. I really do appreciate you listening. Yeah, interesting story. And yes, I am doing my edit on Fanny, because otherwise she's written as a caricature and not a flattering one. So I kind of like Fanny as being quite the wise and unflappable woman. At least that's how I'm picturing her in my mind. I'd be interested to see, like, if this story was rewritten today, what take somebody would have on it. I'm not really a writer, so that's not in my wheelhouse, but it would be interesting to see this, Beverly of Graustark, the 2024 edition. Anyway, thank you for listening. Please do hit the thumbs up on your way out. It does always make me smile, and I will see you tomorrow.